Hey nerds! So, I know that I've already given my unsolicited opinion on James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, but recently it's become clear that my reverence for this film is not, in fact, shared by everyone. Now, I know that it's basically impossible to not see things my way and that I'm almost always right. You're free to disagree, your opinions are totally your own, just as long as you know you're wrong. Some of the negative reviews I've been hearing, other than it's just not really my thing, to which I can only reply, I'm sorry that you don't enjoy fun, please let me know if you need to talk, are as follows. That the story jumps around too much and doesn't make sense, there's no character development, or rather the characters are flat, the story has no deeper or relevant themes that make you care about it, and lastly, nobody cares about these characters. Now I had to double check to make sure that this wasn't in reference to the Bag of Dicks version, no, The Suicide Squad, because all of these would be very valid points for that movie. But alas, we are talking about The Suicide Squad. I don't have time to go through all the critiques one by one. Oh wait, yes I do, and that's exactly what I plan on doing now. So again, if you did not like The Suicide Squad because of any of these reasons I'm citing, I'm not here to talk you into liking it. Oh wait, that's exactly what I'm doing. So please, keep an open mind, sit back, relax, while I carefully and thoughtfully point out how fucking wrong you are. Point number one, the story jumps around too much and doesn't make sense. This is a difficult one for me to argue with, mostly because this statement makes absolutely zero sense. Though the story has a very witty and clever false opening prologue, it very much follows a clear narrative path. I can only really think of one part of the movie that jumps around in time, and that's kind of towards the end. I'll try to explain why I thought that worked and the purpose it served in the greater story. However, if you were too stoned to follow along because you were distracted by a talking shark, let me explain the very complicated and entangled storyline for you. There is a group of criminals who are offered a chance to reduce their sentences by participating in a very dangerous mission that some might call a suicide mission. There's a secret science lab set up on an island called Corto Maltese that needs to be destroyed. This island had originally been run by a dictator who, though vicious and exploitive of his own citizens, posed no threat to the US. This leader is killed by a dude that hates the US and is now in control of this secret science lab called Operation Starfish or some shit. Because this new dictator poses a threat to the US, Amanda Waller, the leader of the Suicide Squad, she sends in the Suicide Squad to destroy it. The end. Wow, I know. It gets pretty complicated. Hard to follow, am I right? Now, let's assume this critique is in reference to the cold open prologue. Okay, fine, yes. That is a little misleading. Here you think you're going along on a journey with long-haired Mr. Svenning, and all of a sudden they all die horrific deaths. Why would we do this? Why would we establish Yondu as our main character if we're just going to kill him off? Now, again, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that no one explained the premise of this movie to you or even really told you the name. I will just assume that you were thrown into the back of a van with a black bag over your head, only removed after the previews rolled. I just want to be polite and politely point out that the name of the movie was The Suicide Squad, as in these fuckers are disposable as fuck. I'm sorry you grew emotionally attached to a human weasel and a guy who can take his arms off and slap someone. I'm sorry if no one explained that irony is a fundamental component to humor. This was a super original way of establishing right out of the gate that A, this movie is going to be fucking violent, and B, at any point, anyone can die. This was done in an attempt to build tension. Tension is a thing that happens in a film when you really hope something doesn't happen, but know that it actually could happen. There is a 0% chance that Captain America is ever going to get killed in a Captain America movie. So when he's fighting, it kind of becomes meh because we know eventually he's gonna win or grow really old. However, when a movie sets up right out of the gate that no one is special, not even the person we assumed was your main character, every fight matters. Every fight there is a chance something bad is gonna happen to the talking shark that reminds you of your dog. In fact, the movie almost goes way too far out of its way to tell you exactly where you are in the story. There's diegetic cards which sum up each chapter, but again, you might not be able to read, and if that's the case, I am sorry. There is one scene where they show something happening and then they go back in time and show what was happening at the same time. Yes, that's a mouthful, but it's not that confusing At the end, when Peacemaker kills Rick Flag and then is about to ice Ratcatcher 2, we have a flashback about 10 minutes before to show what is happening with the rest of the group. I think that this was done to remind us that there is a good and bad guy within the Suicide Squad. Throughout the film, there's a running gag about who is the actual leader / who is the best man for the job between Peacemaker and Bloodsport. While Peacemaker is down in the basement trying to perpetuate the US's horrible exploitation of the island of Corto Maltese, eventually murdering his own teammate with a shard of porcelain, Bloodsport is upstairs fighting for and with his team. There is no longer any ambiguity about who we should be rooting for. Also, worth mentioning that Bloodsport is a reluctant hero in that he does the right thing in spite of how he sees himself, while Peacemaker does the wrong thing under the justification that he's acting for the world's best interest. All this is all the more ironic when we see him doing horrible shit, but that point obviously doesn't matter because apparently there's no character development in this movie. Number 2, there is no character development in this movie. Okay. Now, I know the original Squad of Suicide really laid it on thick when they had individual music videos with text stats for all 7 members of the team. They even doubled down by showing 2 or sometimes 3 of these origin montages that had absolutely zero to do with the actual movie and contributed nothing to their story arc. Fuck, I'm mixing up my sarcasm and seriousness. Sorry about that. My point is that the original Suicide Squad was so lazy and ham-fisted in the way that they just told us who these people and Alligator were. God forbid a movie take the time to develop characters through their actions and motivations, or show how they respond to different circumstances. I hate it when a story organically develops a character's personality as it contributes to the story. Wait, shit, I'm doing it again. Showing who is a character through actions and dialogue equals good. Telling us through clunky montages equals stupid and lazy. Okay, got it. Now, there are hundreds of moments where this movie fleshes out the characters and their arcs, but I'm gonna defer to Phil Mento's video, Why This Movie Worked, where the other Suicide Squad failed. There's a link in the description for that. I will, however, make my point in a scene that I thought was a really solid turning point. The scene when they're driving to get in the van to get the thinker guy with the plugs in his head. Ratcatcher is telling a story about her father was a loving man, but his vices and addictions got in the way of him being there for her. She explains how the rats were used to help them survive and keep them warm, eventually sharing that her father couldn't outrun his demons and died of an overdose, leaving Ratcatcher 2 to fend for herself, eventually leading her to prison. Her vulnerability prompts Bloodsport to share why he is afraid of rats, but more importantly, he sees the pain in Ratcatcher's face, and it makes the pain that he inflicted on his own daughter a lot more real. The only bit of consolation Ratcatcher had was that she knew her father did in fact love her. Realizing that he had deprived his own daughter of even this much is a turning point for Bloodsport's character. That's when he decides that he does in fact need to step up and be a leader. A few scenes later, he's the first to give himself up to the cops and say, "I'm the one you're looking for," taking responsibility for his team and the avatar of his daughter, Ratcatcher's well-being. They needed that exchange to solidify this transition. We already knew that Bloodsport was trained by his father to become a weapon. The movie makes fun of this cliche, clunky exposition by making it almost identical to the origin story of Peacemaker. This was intentional, so much so that Idris Elba says, "Are you having a laugh?" That's British for "Are you joking?" What we don't consider during this earlier exposition is that what Bloodsport and Peacemaker's fathers did to them was horrible and abusive. When Bloodsport is telling the story of his father, we get a quick cut to Peacemaker, who makes this face like, "Yep, that sounds familiar." Both of these men were made violent and angry by their fathers. In this scene, we close the loop and learn that all of these characters were made into villains because of their parents. Except Nanawe, because he's like a shark. Actually a pretty nice guy once you get to know him. Thus, a theme is introduced through the use of character development that monsters are not born, they are made. Remember this, it's going to be important later. The rest of their arc is going to revolve around overcoming their programming and becoming heroes. Harley shoots her new lover because she is breaking the cycle created by her relationship with Mr. J. Polka Dot Man saves the day and owns what he viewed as an embarrassing disability, casting off his mother's shadow, becoming what she wanted him to be in spite of her. Bloodsport learns to be a parental force, to protect his adopted daughter, and we can only assume be a better father to his own daughter. Rick Flag goes against his military programming to make a moral decision to do what's right, ultimately giving his life for that cause. Peacemaker doesn't change. And that's why he is not seen as our hero in spite of being coded as the hero due to his uniform and platitudes like, I cherish peace with all my heart and I don't care how many men, women, or children I need to kill to get it. Nanaue, he's a shark. It's just good he's not eating his friends. Even his character is shown to overcome his loneliness and wanting to make friends. It's so sad when they leave him in the van and they all go and party because he just wants to be a part of the crew. Make me want to come home and hug my dog. This brings us to point number 3. This is a shallow gore fest with no themes that make us care about the movie. In my opinion, which as we discussed is the correct one, there are 2 main themes that go hand in hand. Monsters aren't born, they are made. See? I told you this was coming back. And how exploitation and subjugation leads to dictatorships and power vacuums. Let's focus back on the main plot of the movie and the island of Corto Maltese, a fictional country whose name actually translates to quick hand. Remember that, that's going to come back later. We start off being told that one dictator has been overthrown by an even more ruthless dictator who is eventually overthrown by a giant starfish who creates a hive mind in the population by literally taking control of the people's bodies and minds through, frankly, pretty fucking gross means. Though the first series of dictators attempt to metaphorically control the minds and bodies of the population by stepping on the citizenry to gain power, as do most dictators, Starro the Conqueror does the same thing, only literally. We're also told throughout the story that Starro was captured from outer space by the US and experimented on in an attempt to exploit him as a resource. This is done in another sovereign nation to protect the US if the experiments were to go awry, which they very much do. So again, we have the US exploiting another nation for its own benefits, creating circumstances that harbor a fascist regime. It's a good thing that this has never happened in real life, am I right? And the cycle continues until we're left with a giant monster dictator hell-bent on homogenizing all human life to his will. As the monster is defeated by the titular squad, his dying words are, "I was happy in space, staring at the stars," solidifying that he didn't actually want none. He was made into a monster by the greed and exploitation of other humans, the same way our squad was made into the bad guys and undesirables and deplorables through circumstances made them who they are. And yet, through each other, they were able to transcend their programming and become heroes, bringing us to the 4th and final point. No one cares about these characters. Yeah, that's the fucking point. People no one cares about end up saving the day. With the assistance of what? That's right, rats. Society's most looked down upon of all mammals, the analogy for the lower class. The rats are the ones that end up saving the day with the help of a bunch of people no one gives a shit about. Maybe now, we will. You're welcome.
Hey there everybody, this is Video Editing Elliot. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you would be so kind to like or share or subscribe, do that whole thing. And if you didn't like this movie, I hope you don't take any of my ribbing personally. I mean, look at me, what the fuck do I know? But if you do have alternative theories or anything you want to share, let me know in the comments. That's what they say, right?